survival sex used as a way to get out of homelessness. Most likely a trafficker's not going to be a stranger.
As soon as he turned around, they shot him in the back of his head, and he fell flat on his face.
The number one cause of death, 1 to 44 for black men, is homicide. So it's like, if you're going to die, it's going to be somebody killing you.
Wow, there go the shots, candles, crowd, there go the spot, right where he drop, balloons, bears, right to the ops, room, chair, right to the cops, goons, fear, life in a box, so they spill rat. What happened to real rap, Mac, glued to their hand, they peel, caps, that's cat, so I'm glued to the grind, I'm losing my mind.
This episode is sponsored by Vibrant Water, that's vibrantwater.shop. Welcome to the Matchbook Podcast, where one mind can spark the ideas of many. Today is Overcoming Trauma, Part 2, and we will be talking about sex trafficking and gun violence in our community. I have two special guests today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and talk about what they do in the community.
Hi, my name is Natalie Proud. I'm the Associate Program Director for Covenant House, Pennsylvania, and the Outreach and Advocacy Chair for the Philadelphia Anti-Trafficking Coalition. We work with youth under the age of 24 that are homeless, runaway, or trafficked.
Thank you.
Hey, my name is Terry Starks, Director of Express Yourself Urban Crisis Response Center. I lead the lead in the fight against gun violence in the city. I also mentor the youth, and I also have a community center that serves the community. And it's ran by the community. One of the only centers in the city that's actually ran by the city, by the citizens.
Thank you. So today I feel like it was really important to have this as a topic, and I just want to give some data to the people as they listen to understand why this is important. The International Labor Organization reported that 3.8 million adults are trafficked for forced sexual exploitation, and 1 million children are trafficked for commercial sex exploitation. Women and girls are disproportionately affected by human trafficking, accounting for 71% of all victims. In addition to that, when we talk about our community, the number one cause of death for African American males between the ages of 1 and 44 is homicide. The number 4 cause of death for African American males, all African American males in the United States, is homicide, preceded by number 1, heart disease, number 2, cancer, and number 3, accidents. So this is why these two topics are important today, and I have these guests here so we can have a discussion on it. But more importantly, talk about how overcome this trauma, and also identify resources in the community that can help people that's experiencing this trauma. So my first question is for you, Natalie. I just wanted to get an idea, like, what got you into this work and what keeps you in this work.
So I was actually in grad school at Temple, and I was looking for an internship. I always knew I wanted to do some sort of social services, but I wasn't much field I was sure to go into. I actually was working with like addiction and rehab engagement. But one of the students in my class had said that Covenant House was starting this human trafficking initiative, and they were looking for interns. And honestly, that was right up my alley. I was working at a car shop at the time and couldn't wait to get out of there. So I interviewed, I got it, and then immediately I was like, this is what I'm destined to do. So 12 years later, I'm still there.
So when you think about the community, what are some ways people become high risk to get sex trafficked or human trafficked from your experience?
Sure. So a lot of the vulnerabilities that make people vulnerable to homelessness are also the same vulnerabilities that make people suspect to be trafficked. So that's why we see this intersection at Covenant House of homeless youth and youth that have also experienced trafficking. In fact, about 1 in 5 or 20% of all youth we serve a year are self-reported trafficking victims. The number's probably actually higher because a lot of these crimes go unreported, or when they are reported, they're not believed. So in your statistic earlier, you talked about 3.8 million adults and 1 million children. Those are just the ones that we can verify. But there's so many underreported ones. And also sometimes when people do go to the police, they're just not believed, particularly women of color, because females are like female identifying people are the highest cases of trafficking victims. So the vulnerabilities include foster care involvement, poverty, violence in the neighborhood. It's just kind of something they're used to, right? So when someone is sexually violent with them, it's not, they don't react to it the same way as someone who's never experienced violence on an everyday basis would. Anyone with intellectual disabilities, anyone that identifies as LGBTQIA+, people of color, people that don't speak English as a first language, people with a criminal justice involvement history or anything like that. So we often see survival sex used as a way to get out of homelessness, which is when someone exchanges sex in exchange for a safe place to stay for the night. And we actually have been able to identify males in our care that have also done those same things. So a lot of times we just hear about female identifying people, but it happens to males as well. And again, we want to talk about the underreporting. If a male goes to the police to tell them they've been raped or sexually assaulted, most likely will not get the same responses as a female.
Interesting. As we talk about protecting our women and protecting our communities, we see that both gun violence and sex trafficking, human trafficking,
It disassembles the home and it disassembles the community.
and I'm glad that you brought up the fact about a lot of colored women and girls, because I have some data that I looked up last night doing some research, and I was just like really surprised at the amount. So, according to the National Crime Information Center in the United States, there were 100,000 black girls and women reported missing in 2020. Yet those cases are often marginalized and ignored by law enforcement and national media. So, like you said, they don't get a lot of attention. And as we talk about, like I said, as we talk about protecting our women, I think this awareness is really important. And social media is something that we can use in a positive way to shed light, since national media or big companies don't always see it as a priority, especially when it's women or people of color. So I want the community to hear that and empower y'all to actually use your resources for something positive. Also, I wanted to talk about human trafficking and sex trafficking, because a lot of people don't know what the difference is. I just want to share some definitions I have, and if anything sounds incorrect, let me know, because I'm still learning it myself. So human trafficking is a form of modern-day slavery involving the illegal transport of individuals by force or deception for the purpose of labor, sexual exploitation, or activities in which others benefit financially. Is that kind of correct?
So
Correct?
transportation does not have to be involved for it to be considered trafficking. So it has to include force, fraud, or coercion. Any commercial sex act in exchange using force, fraud, or coercion is considered sex trafficking. And then there's labor trafficking, which is the same thing, but that includes involuntary servitude, domestic ship, things of that nature. We see that a lot of time in like the migrant community and farming areas. We see it in Center City in the restaurants, salons, massage parlors, landscaping, things like that nature. But transportation is not a prerequisite for it to be considered trafficking. So someone that's born in Philadelphia can be trafficked in Philadelphia by someone else who's born in Philadelphia and never leave the city limits. It's that force, fraud, or coercion piece that has to be present for it to be considered trafficking. Unless the person is a minor, and then there does not have to be any force, fraud, or coercion present. Anytime a minor exchanges something of value for sex, it's automatically considered trafficking because they can't consent to sell anything. And I also want to clarify, something of value could be different to everyone. It could be money, it could be a cell phone bill, it could be food, it could be sneakers. It really just depends on what that person deems valuable. So there's no definition on what the value is. It's just something of value to that person.
And just to be clear, when we talk about sex trafficking, this is non-consensual, right?
That's tricky. So sometimes people that are being trafficked are in a situation where they only have two choices, which is to consent and I'm going to air quotes consent. So they don't get, I don't know how to say the word, they don't get exploited by their trafficker or pimp, right? And so that's not really a choice. So it's always non-consensual in that they're in a situation where they're being controlled. And we always would consider it rape or sexual assault, but it's not like this violent thing that's happening every time because people are in survival mode.
Exactly. A lot of people get it confused with prostitution, and that can be a blurry line too. So I just have a definition for prostitution so people can hear it, and we could talk about that blurry line. So a different definition I found from the Encyclopedia Britannica says that prostitution involves engaging, agreeing, or offering to engage in sexual contact with another person in return for a fee.
Hmm.
So it sounds like a completely a different definition from sex trafficking.
Yes,
Um,
because there's the coercion, force, fraud, or piece involved in it. So um, sometimes you could think of like someone who maybe is like a high end escort who's making like taking rich men out to dinner and going to them to like galas and stuff like that. May be something where there's no control and it's just so lucrative of a business that a woman or a man chooses to do that. But the difference between prostitution and trafficking is it's forced and it's controlled and it's always being watched and manipulated. And actually, the people that are being trafficked don't get the money. They have to turn it in to their traffickers, and then the trafficker gives them, if anything, an allowance or just gives them things. Or oftentimes we see this intersection again of like addiction and trafficking. So with the traffickers actually also the person's drug dealer.
wow, that is crazy. And the crazy thing is, this happens a lot within our communities from our community members. Like,
Hmm.
it's not like it's somebody coming to your neighborhood doing this. It's a lot of stuff, especially in our culture, where we have family members or that creepy uncle or that person in the family that it becomes so normal and people don't want to bring it up, and that kind of also, from my experience working with children, makes uh teens want to run away more when they don't feel like they have a voice or somebody to talk to.
Hmm.
um
And can I just point out that
Go ahead.
that's I'm glad you brought that up because that's one of the myths that like whenever we do trainings or presentations that we always try to help educate people on is that most likely a trafficker is not going to be a stranger. The way traffickers work is they exploit someone's vulnerabilities. Strangers don't know your vulnerabilities, right? And so they have to know their vulnerability to be able to exploit it. So actually, 80% of trafficking victims knew their trafficker at the time they were trafficked, and 40% of those traffickers were actually family members. So we always want to make sure we're like keeping people aware of like, you say that creepy uncle or a neighbor or a coach or a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer or a cop. Like anyone can be a trafficker. They don't have a dress code. They don't have any kind of stereotype.
They're not in a white van in the bushes like, you want some candy. Like,
Yeah.
they could be anyone, and they
Mhm.
could most likely somebody you wouldn't expect. Wow, that's crazy. I just wanted to state this. In 2008 to 2010, a review of human trafficking cases conducted by the U.S. Department of Justice, 40% of sex trafficking victims in the United States were Black. In the same study, 60% of labor trafficking victims were Hispanic, and 17% of most whom were undocumented migrants.
Mhm.
The statistics are significant when considering that the Black population currently represents 14% of the United States population, and the Latino population accounts for roughly 18%. So, a lot of people hear these numbers, but when you think about what percentage of the country identifies as minorities, that's a big concentration. So I just wanted to mention that. And Terry, I wanted to ask you, I know you work a lot in the community with gun violence, and right now, the number one cause of death for young Black men is gun violence. Do you see a lot of connections in the homes domestically, like between gun violence, um, domestic violence, sex trafficking? Do you see other things that surround those issues?
Yeah, the home is really a shallow place for the person who's committing these crimes, and nobody really ever talks about that, and the fact that they raging because it's nobody to talk to, and it's they're being condemned because they don't have the outlets for people to talk to. So that's why we created a place for them, because a lot of times you have people that say they diagnosing, and you have a lot of people saying they mentoring, and then you'll have a different set of people that says, they doing outreach. But the outreach that and the mentoring and the stuff that they're doing is a different set of kids compared to the kids that we get. Like, in the middle of the jungle is more about who got the biggest gun, who hanging with the wildest people. And it's a way to reach them people, but you got to let them come to you. They'll trust people who they feel as though can help them. And a lot of times when they catch a case or something like that is the best time to get to them people. And they might, it's sad because I know in areas I am, you got 13-year-olds with 7 homicides. You understand what I'm saying? You got 11-year-olds with 5 homicides. And the families don't even know that they're killing. They just know that when they come home, they playing a video game. But they don't realize that the back door is open for their friends when you at work, mom working 2 or 3 jobs. And her house is the hub for the mayhem. Like they'll shoot and run through the yard and come back over and get in the house. There's always a way for them to get away. And we not really paying attention to what the games are teaching our children. We just buy the game, to try to keep them in the house and stuff like that. But they actually playing the same game outside in life. So
wow,
it's deeper when you start thinking about being brainwashed. And I think that they're like hypnotized
and desensitized.
Yeah,
too.
they hypnotized.
They can't tell the difference.
No, they can't because the video game does the exact same thing. So they feel as though I'm ready to get mines, and a lot of times in the community, it's nowhere for us to go. Have you ever heard Philadelphia call all organizations together to get on the same page?
No. That's hard for me to do when I was working in my community, trying to get all the local organizations just in that one community to work together. It lasted about a week.
Yeah, the biggest failure in the city of Philadelphia is the fact that everything is ran discombobulated, and this is how they keep the power and they keep the division in the ranks to even achieve something that we all know we need. They create chaos within these organizations. So me personally, I just stopped going to the meetings. I used to be in the bigger meetings with the city, and I used to ask them, well, a majority of the table is asking for money. And we'll get in and ask for the resources that y'all got. We can do something with the resources y'all got, but you got to connect this to this, because majority of the people that die don't even have funerals. And victim services is most likely going to get the call. And a lot of times when victim services get the call, they go right back to your social media and they see what you getting involved in. Now they're not paying for the funeral. Yeah. You understand what I'm saying? So now you forced with fish fries and, we usually get calls from the morgue that's saying we need to raise more awareness of how many people are stuck in the morgue, that can't get the funeral off.
Yeah, and let me make something clear, like for the people that's watching this and like all the young bulls out there, everybody out there that think that this is cool, like, through the music and it's cool to like kill and it's cool to post with your guns. Listen, I can tell you from personal experience, from people I grew up with, I got people in jail for life. And when they went to jail, they homies couldn't afford to get them out.
Exactly.
Them homies can't take care of themselves on the street. They forget about you. All of that street fame, Instagram clout, it goes away. You get hit with 60 years. You ain't coming home. You know what I mean? And on top of that, like the fact that you on Instagram flaunting money or whatever you doing, then when you die, you got to do a fish fry. That just look crazy to me.
Yeah.
Like in life, you was balling, but in death, you was broke.
Yep.
And the burden is on your family and on your mom and your community, trying to scrape up some dollars to bury you, instead of scraping up dollars to help change what's going on in the neighborhood. And I'm glad you brought that up because I see that all the time, GoFundMes. Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's a lose-lose situation. And I think the point is, the thing that everybody doesn't talk about is where does it come from? And with both of these, with sex trafficking, human trafficking, poverty, homelessness, gun violence. You mentioned it earlier, mental health, lack of resources.
Deep levels of mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Mental health. Simple stuff, like I can't cry. I can't go to my, quote, friends and tell them how I'm feeling because in my environment, that's weak. you know, and in a situation like you were talking about, Natalie, when it comes to trust, like if somebody's been in an abusive situation or relationship, it's hard for them to trust people moving forward. Do you see that a lot in your experience with people who come through Covenant House, even with trusting y'all as a resource?
Yeah, for sure. In fact, we have a lot of so we have an open door policy, so you can come and go. And oftentimes, particularly with sex trafficking victims or victims of domestic violence, they're in there 20, 30 times in their 3 years that they can be there, because that life just keeps pulling them back, because it's like the devil you know versus the devil you don't know. Some people are scared to change as well. And it just becomes this cycle until they're ready to break it. So we offer all the resources that we can, all the trust that we can. Consistency is key, especially particularly with trafficking victims. Like if you say you're going to be somewhere at a certain time, then be there. And if you can't, just communicate that. But yeah, we definitely see people coming in and out due to their inability to trust as a survival method.
I wanted to ask both of you this question. I'll start with you, Natalie. For a lot of the survivors you see, what is something that you feel like motivates them to move forward and overcome what they've been through and overcome the trauma they've been through when you do see it?
Yeah, we do see it a lot. I mean, not as often as we would like, or maybe not at the point that we are working with them. But there is a lot of people that we work with that come out of the life and they want to give back. I would say it's hard for me to say because I'm not like a survivor of trafficking. And usually I have someone here to speak with me about that because that's kind of the best way to gain insight. I would say some sort of rock bottom, similar to addiction. Like, what is it that's finally going to get you out of this life? Is it going to be almost getting killed? Is it going to be losing your kids? Is it going to be losing a limb? These are the kind of things that we see. Also, trafficking victims, people that are like in the throes, they don't have a support system, right? So there's no one that they're going to disappoint, so to speak. So if we can create relationships with them and earn their trust, they're going to be like, oh no, I don't want Miss Nat to know, right? So, or someone else at the Covenant House. It could be someone else. And once we become invested in them and they invest in us, sometimes that's enough to change because they know that we're going to be there for them no matter what. I'm literally involved in like a federal trial at this point because of someone that memorized my number to call me and text me when they were like being trafficked out of a hotel in Jersey. Obviously, I'm not going to say more because it's still going, but this girl knew to like memorize my number from years ago. And she texted me at like Friday on like 8:00 at night on a Friday, and just like really randomly. I never check my work phone on weekends, but something had just told me like, just check your phone. And then the cops went in, and luckily, due to our work with the Anti-Trafficking Coalition, we have some FBI contacts. So they had went and helped the local police because the local police had no idea what to do. Because they're not seeing trafficking all the time, and they may be seeing it, but they're not identifying it as
And
trafficking.
they're not trained, right?
Yeah.
They're not properly trained. They're not properly trained for a lot of things. Let's be clear on that. Terry, when we talk about overcoming trauma for the survivors who have been shot, and more importantly, the moms, the dads, cousins, I see you out on the corner responding to that. I mean, so freshly that sometimes the body's still there with the sheet on it. How not just for the families, but even just for you, like how does that weigh on you, and how do you see families overcome that over time, if they even do?
Yeah, well, that's touchy because about 2 years ago, I had like a breakdown from just kept seeing the same face under that sheet and on that silver table. It was a particular moment where a father who I grew up with, one of my good friends, he was trying to break his son. One son got shot 21 times. The other son got shot 6 times by the same guy. But come to find out that the one that got shot 6 times, he robbed these people. He never told his brother or his father that he robbed these people for $9,000 worth of cocaine. And his father, which is my friend Reese, he went to go talk to the guys to try to figure out what can he do to squash the beef with these guys. and, save his sons. Well, it didn't work out that way. They lowered them to 19th and 100 and Park. It's like a bar right there. He went down there. He went by himself. He went to go talk to these guys. And as soon as he turned around, they shot him in the back of his head, and he fell flat on his face. And Islamically, we got to wash the body. So now I got to wash the body with both sons and the nephew. And it was just one of them moments where afterwards, and I'm looking at the sons, and my eyes is red because all he wanted to do was take care of his sons and save his sons.
So the dad.
Yeah, so that right there really like took me to a point where I had to really like stop being so close to the death part of the work, because the death part we were fighting for maybe like 10 or 15 years, and it was so many people. So it made me start looking at the life part. Yeah. So I started building entrepreneurs. I started trying to teach them financial literacy. And what happens is the family were able to create a center like mine's, but they created a store, a studio, and I could take you past there in Kensington. It sits in Kensington. And they cater into the community for the father, like his face is on the wall. And they became like not a version of me, because they still learning how to get out the streets, but it was a coping mechanism for them to actually do something different. And they starting to like it. So a lot of them is changing their ways, and, they coming around more often. They asking more questions. So I believe that when it gets rough, like how our city is right now, in times of stress, it's times of change. Like it's like we pushing towards something new. Yeah. And the forces is aligning, and we got to get through the rough part to get to the best part. So I believe that the style of shooting and killing, which is happening, is going to fade away. And then it's going to be a healing process. So I believe that guys like us, and I commend you for the work that you do. I believe that we are catalysts for the change, and we might not often get mentioned in the rooms of the people that's actually doing nothing,
Yeah.
But
have the resources.
Yeah. But what I'll say is, I'd rather help that mother or that person that's on the street that has nowhere to go, and than to be around a bunch of people who's claiming this work and they not really doing the work. So, like I said, when you looking at change from a incident that happens, some people take that change and they do so much more for other people to help them cope. Like I see so many mothers that been at my couch, and they doing activist work now, and they going out in the streets, and I be like, I remember they came to me broken, and now look at the mother that's in NOMO. I remember when she lost her son. She married the guy that got NOMO. She was in every meeting crying and, about her son, and now look. So I look at it, like I said, man, change is coming, and I believe that we all are a part of it. But one thing I'm going to leave y'all with is God says that my cup shall runneth over, right? He already created the system to break this chain that we got, but he also says that the child shall lead. It's going to be in the children. The adults are too stubborn to
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, the adults are too stubborn. So the same people that they saying is the killers are going to be the same people that's going to turn and change, because they have to realize that you have to protect the village. And nobody has taught them that. They only taught them to fend for themselves and survival. So, like I said, I commend y'all, and I want y'all to know that the change is going to be within the children.
Also, this episode is sponsored by Vibrant Water. Vibrant Water is all natural alkaline water. It has fruits and sometimes vegetables in it. And what it does is it detox your body. One thing that's good about this company is the fact that the preparation is done. So you have a healthy drink that's going to detox your body, and you can do it on the go. So make sure you order from vibrantwater.shop. Sure. And I have a long experience working with teenagers and children and mobile crisis. So one of my jobs was I would get calls about, just for example, a little girl who want to kill herself because she's being bullied. Or I might work with a 17-year-old who moms feel like she can't control him no more. He want to be part of the streets, you know what I mean? He want to, post videos with guns, talk that talk. And she feel like, I don't want to lose my son. So I would respond to a lot of those situations and do therapy and try to come up with coping mechanisms and, more importantly, a way out. What else can you do? So a lot of the times, just like you would give an opportunity to put it through art, through music. They could put it in their art. Like the program you're doing. I remember I came out your shop and they was making T-shirts, being entrepreneurs, selling their brand, keeping them busy, keeping them in a situation where they have somewhere else to put that energy, that anger, that frustration. When we talk about, people who are at risk and vulnerable and been through things, and we talk about them overcoming, trust is really big. Working in the community that you live in the community I was working in.
Yep.
And my first time down there, walking in there, I'm from the streets. So people get that vibe okay, I feel like I can trust them because I don't come in there telling them what to do. I'm like, what's up? What's going on? I show respect because a lot of the people that I work with in the past, they would just want to take advantage of the community. It's all about numbers.
Yeah.
It's all about statistics, funding, and they see people as numbers. But, when you see people as people, they can feel that and they trust that. So when we talk about overcoming trauma, what's some of the things that you feel like become barriers to overcoming trauma? I mean, we talked about the fact that we have organizations with funding and resources that don't really do the work, and that's kind of a barrier. But what do y'all think some of the barriers are for people that's trying to make it, out of the situation?
There's a lot of systematic barriers because of the life that people may have lived when they were younger. That can become a barrier to employment, which then becomes a barrier to housing and
Hold
things.
on one second. Be clear about that. I think I know what you're saying. You said it becomes a barrier to employment. Are you implying that they got a record?
Yeah.
Okay.
So employers don't want to take people with records.
Mm-hmm.
Landlords don't want to take people with records, right? Oftentimes trafficking victims are not able to rent because they have prostitution charges, even though they were a victim of a crime, not perpetrating a crime.
So they could be a victim of the crime and still be judged as if they were a perpetrator.
Yes, because prostitution is illegal and they're out there, right? So the people that are working are the ones you see. You never see the trafficker. You never see the pimp, right? So they're the same people that are going to get caught up. Just like drug dealers, you always see their corner boys. You don't always see the boss, right? And no one's going to talk about the person that is controlling them or who has all the power, right? Because there's such a fear instilled in them. So oftentimes the prostitutes are always, oh my God, can we edit that? Trafficking victims are always charged with crimes such as prostitution, loitering, small marijuana sales, things like that, a false identification to a cop, things that whatever they feel like they need to do in that moment to not feel the wrath of the trafficker. And if that means lying to the cops, then that's what they're going to do. And they're also going to protect the trafficker because that is the only person that they feel is in their corner, right? Because they're not in the headspace to see that this is this exploitive, abusive relationship. We talk about mental health. Again, we want to talk about how people go to see therapists or psychiatrists and aren't believed, right?
Are misdiagnosed, right?
Yeah, misdiagnosed, over-medicated.
Over-medicated. Become addictive to some medications through their trauma.
Yeah, of course. And again, it's a lot of just putting Band-Aids on things, right? So in Kensington, where I work, there's a huge opiate epidemic, and everyone's like, oh, just get them to the methadone clinic, get them to the methadone clinic. Well, they're still dependent on something for the rest of their life. You have to be there 7 days a week, 7 a.m.
So you go from one addiction to another.
Yeah.
You go from an illegal addiction to a legal addiction.
Yeah. And so it's no long-term solution. Everything is a Band-Aid, right? And again, housing, obviously I work, with a homeless organization, but a lot of things can be solved with stable, safe housing, whether that's a community housing, shared living, a safe home, right? All of these things happen because whatever's happening in the home isn't safe, right? Whatever the person that lives there deems to be safe. So whether that's abuse, whether that's no food, right? A lot of times we hear that. We hear students have like no food to eat, and then they can't learn because they're starving.
They can't go to school and focus with an empty stomach. Yeah. What about you, Terry? What's some of the things you see being barriers for people?
Well, as Philadelphia is set up with systems to keep you from deterring you from where you got to go at and get to. So some of the barriers are, it starts with the politician. It starts with the religious groups. If you want to get in depth, it starts with the CDCs. It starts with the civic associations. It starts with the ward leaders. It's so many barriers when you trying to deal with the community. Like as far as me, some of my barriers I have been called out on me for fixing the city. I'm saying we saving lives down here. Like, what are we doing down here that you?
So they prioritize something else over lives.
Yeah, they find little loopholes that, in the midst of just imagine if we in the middle of a war, all-out war, which is we are in the city of Philadelphia, you still got people that's trying to find ways to pick your system apart to stop it. Because Philadelphia has an old saying. It's called the dumber the better. The dumber the community is, the better it is for somebody to be able to take advantage of these people. So the barriers that you fighting, you are taught to go to the politician, tell them what's going on in the community. And you taught to go to the meetings to try to galvanize in the community. But now they taking your plan and they doing exactly what you doing, and they stopped you. And now they doing it, but they doing it
in a generic way. Exactly.
So the barriers of Philadelphia is Philadelphia working against Philadelphians.
And this happens a lot across the country and world. It's a lot of factors. I'm going to just say, I started a nonprofit when I was 19. I didn't have nothing. I went to a community center, asked could I hold meetings there every Wednesday? They said, sure. Started with 2 people, 4 or 5, did a big event, had the councilwoman donate. I went to her office myself, and I kept going till she put up some money. And she did for the event, but it was just an event. So after the event, it was successful. People came, they ate. I had resources for safe sex, jobs, employment, but I realized that those type of things need to be sustained because these things ain't going to just heal from one event. So when I got older, I started focusing on mentorship, and I started working with youth. And Drexel University funded my organization at one point, and they had a big plan. They had the Promise Zone designation that I was a part of. But I can say this because I don't have ties with nobody. My alliance is to myself and the communities I come from. I can say that in that experience, it was a lot of that. It was a lot of, I just want to be in front of the camera. Look what I'm doing
exactly.
and down the bottom in Manchester. Look what we doing. And my thing was, do something that matter. Like they created a center where people could come and get employment opportunities. They could come do yoga classes. They could get mental health. And that was a lot of the stuff that the community said they needed. We don't just need you to come down here and give out turkeys and just, disrespect the culture and the history of the neighborhood. We want you to give back. And the way you can give back is by equalizing the playing field. Give us the same incomes, education, and resources. So that's where I'm at. And I play the role as a liaison because in the streets, they don't trust them.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you got to watch. You got to watch it. Like, I remember a police officer came to me and said at a meeting, she's like, okay, Mr. Clemens, since you know so much, how can we catch the people that's doing all the killing and the drug dealing. I said, no, I'm not doing that. What you trying to get me to do? I tell you think you slick. I said, first things first, my job is to try to create prevention. I'm thinking about what can this young person do now productively so they won't have to be in a situation where they got to feel like they in survival mode. Your job is to go find out what happened after it happened.
Mm-hmm.
You're a detective. You're supposed to protect and serve. But if you really think about that, when something's going down, the police is not there to protect me. They're there to clean up and find out what happened after it went down. The police don't live with you in your home. So if you can't be licensed to carry because you got a record, you can't get a job because you got a record, you can't live nowhere because you got a record, you go to other resources. You live where you live, you get money how you get money, and you're going to get protection how you get it. And when something come down, you don't trust the cops. So is every man for itself. So trust is a big issue in the community. And the trust starts with us. Like if we can learn how to point out those people in the community like you, Natalie. She trusted you. She texted you in that situation. The mothers trust you. They come sit on your couch. People trust me. That's what's really gangster.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's really official. Because what's not gangster for everybody that's listening, for those sons out, the people that have those sons out there, those daughters out there, or those individuals themselves. Like what you don't think about is you really want to live the rest of your life as an infant. You want the state or the government to feed you, house you, tell you what to do. Because that's what's going to end up when you out there living in the streets the way you live in. And when you have opportunity to change, you just choose not to. And for the people that's like, they just so filled with anger and they just on survival mode using their reptile brain out there and they not really using their mind, those people need that help. And it's people, like us, and it's people in their family that see that and they give up on them. They don't give them a chance, you know what I mean? And I understand, like, sometimes you look at it like, I don't want to keep giving you a chance over and over again. But if you can't do it, refer them somewhere. It's organizations that can help. So I'm really glad that, y'all came today and y'all spreading this information. I wanted to talk about a program. You ever hear of Heal and Hurt People?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Heal and Hurt People is a program, I think it's with Drexel, right?
Yeah.
And their mission is to provide case management and mental health support to victims of gun violence, because their idea is that our bodies heal, but sometimes our minds don't. And I think that's a good model. From my personal experience, I know the people who started it.
Yeah, I know them.
Yeah,
I've been in meetings with them and everything.
Yeah, I just feel like more people should know about that.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my, constructive feedback on programs like that. Like that should be in the community center at the Poppy store.
And I thought that we were going to be like, when I was with Temple at the time, I built the Philadelphia ceasefire program for them. And we started going across the country with them. And when we met them people, it was more like a clash with them instead of them actually working. I like the day model better, and I'm thinking that we adding on the resources.
Mm-hmm.
And if I would have had a chance to do it all over again, I think I would have went with them, because I think we could have done more. And that's what made me walk away from Temple, because when Lisa Lang interviewed me for 13 days with Temple, she came to my center. She got a chance to meet the people, and Temple pretty much said I was a conflict of interest because they wanted my program and not the actual college. They wanted her to go through the college, and the college sits in the middle of the poorest neighborhood.
Yeah, Temple sits in North Philly and Drexel sits down my way. And Mansfield down
in the
bottom.
middle of the poorest neighborhood.
And the students don't know where they at.
Exactly.
And that's what I tried to do with Drexel. I said, you need to have like some type of welcome pamphlet.
Yeah.
Like you're moving into a community that been here, that has a culture. It should be meetings where people can coexist. But the lack of respect that the community feels is you come, drop trash, party all night, and that creates more conflict. Yeah. And the same thing up at Temple in the community up there. And you see a lot of students getting robbed and killed. And that's high profile. But, when it comes to, black and brown people getting robbed and killed, it's like, oh, that's everyday business.
It's not. It's like a coping mechanism. Like, we actually seen the college try to reach out to organizations to put like security and that was really much the students' parents were trying to put up monies to help the community organizations. But like I said, in the city of Philadelphia, man, you got one big swamp of just just resources that's just being played around with. Like, it's not really actually helping the people. The people that help the people really do it with no resources. It's just
Exactly.
all love.
Yeah, like that's where I came from. Like it's really hard because once you start accepting money, you have to play the game they want to play.
Yeah.
So I had to always play that fine line. Like I'm not going to take your money.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to hustle this up.
Yep.
But that's the problem. Is like when you do get the funding, you have to do it their way, and their way ain't always the right way because they don't want to listen to you because you listening to the people out there that's actually involved in what's going on. Like one last question I got for y'all before we kind of wrap it up is when we talk about overcoming trauma, I use the word overcoming because I feel like it's not ever something that you just can forget about. What's some ways as an individual that in your own trauma, you don't have to be in detail about it, but what's some ways that you feel like you overcame it as an individual, and what kind of keeps you going when you just like, I want to give up, because y'all are some important people in the community. So I just want to know from y'all, like, and for people listening that want to give up, that want to kill themselves, that want to keep doing things the way they doing it because it's fast money, but they feel like they have nowhere to go, they feel like they have no outlets. What would you say to them? And also, in addition to that, like I said, what helped you overcome your trauma?
I think everyone who has some severe trauma can only overcome it when they have someone that's going to be in their life to support them, right? It doesn't have to be a family member. It doesn't have to be someone you know that well. It could be someone at an organization. But when you feel connection with someone, and then that's when you kind of can get some clarity on like, oh no, like if I'm in a situation where I'm doing something where I might be killed, right? Or I might be hurt. If you think about that person, sometimes that can like give you some light and something to worth fight for. That's what happened with me and everything I've been through, right? It was always one person I was like, oh, I can't, like, what if I have to tell them this? You know what I mean? And obviously I'm not talking about trafficking because I'm not a survivor of trafficking, but trauma in general. So, and I see that with the youth we work with, and it's like when they finally are ready to trust us and start to begin the process of getting out of the life of trafficking, they know that we understand that like we're going to accept them back every time they try to come back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've had people tell us some crazy things that they left to go do, and we're like, okay, do you need something to eat? You want to shower?
You
Like,
focus on the basics.
yeah,
Like that's where I agree with. I agree that well, both of y'all both mentioned that, and that's a commonality is the basics. Like people don't have love, they don't have food, they don't feel safe, and when you don't have those basic needs, you go straight into animal mode. And what's happening is animal mode is being glorified through social media, through media. Comparison is being glorified. Like, oh, I got a better life than you. I got more money than you. And that's not reality. And I think that's playing a big role in it.
Social media is the autopilot of it. Social media is a feeling that people get. It's like a high. A like is a high. A follower is a high. So they want to do whatever it takes to get that high.
And people have died over those highs, those likes. I've seen it. They died on live. They killed on live.
All through the city, not all through the country. You look around and you think about it. We didn't have social media when we were coming up, and we were the happiest kids you can
'Cause
possibly.
our gratification came from people that we looked up to. We didn't have a like or a follow, but we had the old head on the corner or the uncle or the aunt or the big brother, whoever. We wanted that validation, but that validation came with some morals and standards and
it was
work.
always a lesson back then growing up, and I believe that social media is the biggest distraction to humanity when it comes down to us actually connecting and bonding without the distraction of the phone. Like, even I see it. Sometimes I want to look on there And I be having to program myself to just know, like, because I like to know what's going on with I mentor a lot of youth. So, I like to check in on them. I like to make sure that, they held they end of the bargain up, as well as me giving out the resources that I have. It's just a tick for attack. Like, the more you become a stronger leader, you know how to get and sit and lead from behind and not lead from the front. I'm not always going to be in the front no more, and that's what I tell my people. I'm moving towards like training leaders now instead of.
I feel like that's the number one goal of a leader. Is to prepare other people to be leaders.
Yeah.
So as we talk about that, and you talk about yourself, and you just told me a situation that really, kind of you broke down with. So for you, everything you've been through and everything you've seen, what keeps you balanced? Like, how did you overcome that?
Well, my wounds. I've been shot 5 times in the chest by a preacher in a drug deal that changed my life. And I was 25 years old. Well, 24, going into 25, and I went on to my surgery. 1 out of every 33 people make it. I have an open heart surgery. And Temple actually hired me for a program to fight in the community.
That program, before that program, you were saying you got shot 5 times in the chest?
Yeah. And my surgery and my influence in my community is really what keeps me grounded and keeps me level-headed and keeps me, wanting to help more and do more, because we don't have people like me. And nobody ever checks on the lion to see if the lion is okay. So if we know that, when we know we got to keep it, cool with it. You got to take some time off.
Yeah.
You got to travel a little bit. You got to make sure that sometimes it's all right to be missed. And when you come back stronger. So, like I said, it's people like y'all that let me know that the real world is still here.
Yeah.
And we all on different islands, and we trying to help the people. And the fight gonna be uniting this, and turning into coalitions where we don't have to broadcast it. And
we don't have to show everything.
Yeah, we don't have to show nothing.
Yeah.
It's just more catering to the people that's in need. Like, sometimes I go down Kensington, I feed, and
but you don't take your phone like, look.
Yeah, I want to sit down. Like, honestly, I have fed and have actually sat out there with them people and talk to them people, and they be some of the most down to earth people that you could ever meet in your life. And what I learned is that a trial or incident in their life that led them to this, if it was somebody there at that time that could have been the person that can help, then that's when the road to recovery starts. But until you heal that bandage, that wound that's keep on making them relapse, you're going to have the addict. But I believe that the more they get in tune with people like us, the more that the healing becomes ongoing. And then what happens is change come, and
over time.
Yeah.
And that's why I always make sure I say overcoming. What caught my attention with both of you was, in your situation, Natalie, was the covering the house, being out, educating, coming to, where I was working at the time. And me being in the street, I'm out there. You see me out there, but I had to be out there to see your casket. Yeah. And I ain't gonna lie, the casket caught my attention. I'm like, it's just a casket sitting outside.
Sitting in the middle of North Philly. It's been there 13 years.
And I think when you see it, and I seen you walking through the streets with it, it like made people realize, like, damn, remember the number one cause of death, 1 to 44 for black men, is homicide. So it's like, if you gonna die, it's gonna be somebody killing you. Mm-hmm. And a lot of us know that. And me growing up, I ain't the most perfect person in the world. I done did things, you know what I mean? But I always try to focus on not the negative, but what can I do to change that? Like, a lot of stuff I did wasn't always my fault, because it was what I was programmed. It was my environment, but I tried my best. And my friends is the same way. I don't judge them. I don't judge nobody to sell drugs or do whatever they do. because I look at it like if they had a better opportunity, they would have did it. You know, we all come from the mud, so I understand. So I don't ever want nobody to think that, you know, because we do the work we do, we feel like we better than nobody. And that's why I brought y'all here, so we all could let people know, like, yeah, we do the work, but we come from it as well. And we don't mind going back into it to help people. And I think people focus too much on negativity when it comes to like people like us trying to step up. It's like they always trying to tear it down. Like, oh, well, Natalie can't say that because I know her personally, or Terry, I remember he used to do this and that, or, you know, ARSIN, whatever, he did this and that. And it's like, if we focus more on the positive than the negative, then people won't be so scared to do positive. A lot of them are scared because they feel like their past going to catch up with them. You know, one of the biggest things, aside from me losing like 52 friends and associates since I was 15, wanting to commit suicide myself, not mentioning it to my family, was music. And that's why, you know, I got the platform I got now, because with music, it didn't judge me.
Yeah.
You know, in the neighborhood I was coming up, shy, quiet, but music, I could be loud as I want, I could say what I want, and I could really show the real side of me where I feel like I wouldn't be judged. You know, I could be raw with it. And my friend Brian, he got shot in the neck when he was 16. And he's 35. He's been paralyzed from the neck down with a trach since. And he has a podcast. He goes and speak to people. And he'll tell you he's more alive now than he was before he was on his feet. And I'm going to play a little documentary as we wrap up and end this out. I'm going to play some documentary he did and talk about his story. But I say that to say, as we wrap up, I just want to thank y'all both for being here. And, you know, I really appreciate what y'all doing. And I want to put this out there, you know, the Covenant House, that information will be in the description of this YouTube video or in the description of this episode. Urban Crisis Center, Express Yourself information will be in there, Healing Hurt People, along with a lot of other resources. Because I feel like more importantly, just to talk about it is to show people how to actually do something about it. So as we wrap up, I'm gonna share a verse with y'all that I did. It's a song I did called Black Man Tears. And I wrote it because I feel like that's something that's like taboo, especially in the community. It's like, it's a sign of weakness, and it's also the fuel of rage. So it's called Black Man Tears. It's a song I did. It's on my album. And it's a true story. Like, everything I say in here is real, you know, and it's like, I just like to keep it raw because these experiences. So check it out. Ain't seen my homie like 6 years. Took 6 shots, seen the sun cry 6 tears. Sure it was 6, yeah, cause when the 6 drop, he figured he grabbed the 4 and then pop like Ric Flair. Twin Glocks make you vanish with disappear. Disappear, ball heads, they ain't missing here. No mom's neighborhood dog would lick the tears of my peers cause they junkie pops didn't care. Rap is his expression, do you get it? If you don't, then how can they call you critics? Aggression, what he supposed to do with it? If he's stressing, then he probably kill you with it. It's trauma. He ain't got no coping skills. Just triggers. Press triggers for the coke and pills that get sold for meals. Cause that's the hunger pain on the baking soda hills. That's why he hold it still. But still, what he face, he don't share. On his face is no tears. Through his eyes, you won't see. And when he cries, they don't hear. Black Man Tears. So I feel like as an artist, there's a lot of people that's dead. And I did a song called Message to My Murderer too on my album because I wanted to write from a person that got murdered to their murderer. So that's a song where I basically say, why did you change on me? I wonder what's shedding more. My blood as I'm going to the other side, or the tears running slowly down my mother's eyes. So that's the lyrics to that hook, because I had so many people that left my presence and got killed by somebody they know, or a situation they don't even know why they did. Like,
and it's common.
And your homie, he walked away thinking, I guess things were squashed or whatever, and he don't even know. Like, you know, I don't know because I didn't go to the other side, but I wanted to explore there creatively. Like, what would I say to this person? And in that story, you know, if you listen to it, I'm talking to this person who was wilding out, who traded on me, this and that. But that person, I forgave them. And in forgiving them, they were able to forgive themselves and let go of their burden. And I just wanted to share that with everybody as we wrap up. And this is Overcoming Trauma Part 2, the Matchbook Podcast.
This is a message to my murderer. I hope that hearing this is hurting you. You hurt so many people you don't understand. So think about it before you kill another man. Dear Lord, forgive
forgive me for my sins. As I lay me down to sleep, I pray my soul to keep.
Homicide, addiction, committing robberies. Seen it as a kid, still it lives deep inside of me. I was told I survived because I'm great enough. What don't kill me now would definitely kill me later, y'all. Until that day, I focus on my day by day. Way to make a way for my people before we fade away. Shot with the AKs, 10 times A to K. Alphabet, the only way out of it's to pave a way. JFK, Martin Luther, they sprayed on Malcolm X. Ain't no Judas in my crew, maybe I ain't spot him yet. My best friend Tim, I met him out the jacks. Knew him since a seed, full of greed, so he out the flex. Took him under my wing, started the music biz. But I'm wondering if someone that we knew as kids could be the one that really caused you the most pain. It got me feeling so strange, so I'm wondering, why did you change your name? I wonder what shame more. All blood as I'm going to the other side. All the tears running slowly down my mother's eyes. Why did you change your name? I wonder what shame more. All blood as I'm going to the other side. All the tears running slowly down my mother's eyes. Now things going good and we growing up. Blowing up, got shows, so I'm showing up. Money time after time, it's never slowing up. Middle fingers hold them up to let the haters know what's up. Now it's unfamiliar faces in my entourage, cause it's growing on a daily basis in my side. To give advice on who I should keep by my side. My homie Tim, because he down when it's time to ride. But then again, he been missing the appointments lately, and told a friend he stopped supporting cause he wouldn't pay me a piece of the pie, he want a bigger slice. I look him deep in his eyes and tell him get a life. Since then, Tim hasn't been a friend to me, and jealousy has turned a friend to an enemy. Why the people we love cause us the most pain? It got me feeling so strange, so I'm wondering, why did you change your name? I wonder what shame more. All blood as I'm going to the other side. All the tears running slowly down my mother's eyes. Why did you change your name? I wonder what shame more. All blood as I'm going to the other side. All the tears running slowly down my mother's eyes. It's 2 o'clock p.m. and I ain't up yet. Reaching for my covers, can't feel them, something suspect. I'm standing up, but my body's still in the bed. Sheets turning red as the blood spills from my head. I'm dead, can't speak, cause I'm still in shock. Somebody killed me in my sleep and I ain't feeling shot. I'm feeling hot, I'm feeling cold. Somebody killed my body, somebody killed my soul. Cause I can't stand to watch my mother cry. I'm reaching out but she can hear me from the other side. God take me to the time when it happened. I see Tim walking with his 9 and he laughing. Can't live with it, so we go insane. Pistol in his mouth, contemplating should he blow his brain. Why the people we love cause us the most pain? It got me feeling so strange, so I'm wondering, why did you change your name? I wonder what shame more. All blood as I'm going to the other side. All the tears running slowly down my mother's eyes. Why did you change your name? I wonder what shame more. All blood as I'm going to the other side. All the tears running slowly down my mother's eyes.